Hey, what's happening, everybody? The Job Guys here with you once again. I'm Ryan. That's Nick. We are joined for the first time ever by Austin up there in the corner. Welcome. Thank you for being here, Austin. We will hear from you in just a second. But, man, huge news today. We had to do a special report. Another big release. In this one, probably the biggest of all of them, guys. Bray Wyatt has been released. Now, we don't know why. We don't know the circumstances behind it. Did he ask to be released? Did they just let him go? He was told it was a money issue. Lots of questions here. He has not been on TV since he burned to death and then reincarnated at WrestleMania. And then he was back the very next night and never seen again. We've heard numerous things that he was having some mental health issues. Some of those have been rebutted, guys. So we have come here to talk about the Bray Wyatt gimmick, the persona, what's next. We have three differing opinions here. Nick, you were a huge fan of Bray Wyatt right out of the gate. You loved the backwoods character, and then you fell out of love with him. Austin is still a Bray Wyatt guy, loves Bray Wyatt, thinks the future's bright no matter where he goes, and I never liked the character to begin with. Thought he was very good. I thought he was a great actor in a bad movie. So that's where I'm coming from. We're all going to go around the horn here, starting first with Austin, who's brand new to us. Austin, just tell us very short, because we want to get into this, a little bit about yourself. The newest sports anchor in Alpena, Michigan, by the way. Congratulations. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then jump right in when you heard the news today, man.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just signed a deal to be a sports anchor up in Alpena, Michigan. I'm a big wrestling fan, been watching since 2009. I've done stuff with Cultaholic where I've appeared on some of their podcasts, and I've also been a Discord mod for them for a very long time. And yes, this Bray Wyatt news is just kind of like, part of me was like, I should have seen it coming, but at the same time, it's still wild of just how the timeline goes, because I stand by the fact that I think Bray Wyatt, the person, he's one of the most creative minds that WWE has had in terms of their wrestling talent in a while, because we haven't seen characters like this in WWE. Like, I'm talking Eater of Worlds Bray Wyatt and The Fiend Bray Wyatt. We haven't seen characters like this in WWE for quite some time, because now it's all their characters are a lot more grounded and a lot more like business. Like, they're still in a company that is fighting for titles, and it's very more like brass ring talk and all this kind of stuff. A lot more of it is grounded in reality, and Bray does not fit that at all. So it was a welcome change. I would say, and I have told this before, the Firefly Funhouse match, which I know you guys had not really spoken very highly of in your year-end awards, was probably one of my favorite things in wrestling in the last few years, I want to say. Now, I'm a big AEW guy, of course, but WWE still has pulled me in with some stuff, and that was one of the things I was absolutely blown away by. And it's just kind of seems to me as like, again, another wasted opportunity with a character that you don't get a ton of times with your talent, because when you have someone with that much charisma and a mind that works like that, because we've seen him in stuff that he's talked about on YouTube, like he's talked about ghost stories that some people think tie into the Fiend character. Like, he hadn't even released that character within 4 years before that video was posted on YouTube of him just telling a ghost story, and everyone was like, wait, was this the birthplace of the Fiend? He's the amount of Easter eggs he puts into the Firefly Funhouse, the just crazy amount of passion you can see he has for these characters is evident in the work that he's done. And it sucks. He's going to find work very soon, whether it's AEW, whether it's Ring of Honor, regardless, it'll happen. But I mean, this one sucks for sure.
Well, Austin, you said a ton there. Holy cow, we could do an entire show on just what you said, and that was great, man. But I think it maybe boils down a little bit to, Nick, there's a clash of styles here. There's a clash of styles. And this guy is very much, you either are into this supernatural stuff or you're not. You either want this supernatural stuff in your wrestling or you don't, because it's very hard to have everything Austin just said, and then in the very next segment, sometimes in the same segment, you have just two normal wrestlers wrestling each other, and you're supposed to
building someone as an MMA fighter.
Yeah, you're building somebody as an MMA fighter, and you have two different worlds here, but they're on the same show. How do you do that? And I think that's where a lot of people are just like, yeah, this doesn't work for me, brother.
That's where my issue comes from is, and I've said this on your show multiple times, it is a fantasy world that wrestling is from, right? It's a staged world. However, there are rules from within this world. As everything we watch, from Star Wars to The Walking Dead to Game of Thrones to wrestling to Die Hard or a movie, there's rules, right? Like someone can't just fly in the movie Die Hard, right? It's taking place in normal time. Someone can't just pull out a lightsaber in The Walking Dead. Like, what the hell's going on here? Or a zombie can't flip and start talking to the characters. That's my biggest issue with him. This is supposed to take place in a reality base. We're in that reality era, I guess, if we still are. And the stuff is just so over the top. And to be honest, this stuff has not worked. I mean, me and you had a conversation a while back. Papa Shango, Vampiro, The Brood, Midian, Corporate Ministry. Oh, we all cringe when we hear that. You know, all these characters. It just, again, the guy was good at what he did. I'll give him that. But it's the same as, like, Duke was a good garbage man. I just didn't like it, though. You know, like I bought that he was a garbage man. Like, I mean,
the dumpster Drosy, you mean?
Yeah. Like, I mean, I get that. Like, the problem wasn't him portraying that he was a garbage man. The problem was he was a freaking garbage man.
Yeah.
And the problem isn't Bray Wyatt's ability. Same as Bliss. I think Bliss is great at the character she portrays. I just don't like the character
that she portrays. Yeah, I agree with that. Anybody that we have beaten that to death. I think she is the single best female on the roster, and they've ruined her.
I think the dude can talk. The dude can work. He's got charisma. I told you this a long time. I saw him as a con artist. I thought that was their way to get out of this and away from all this magical demon stuff.
Before the Fiend, you're talking. Right.
And even with the Fiend, like, this was all smoke and mirrors, man. This was all to try to bridge him away from this. I don't know. I thought he would have played a great con artist, a guy, you know, selling used cars, you know, just pulling the wool over everybody's eyes.
You know, I agree. I mean, the guy is great at what he did. I mean, he's got charisma for days. That was all awesome. But, you know, I mentioned it's a good actor in a bad movie, and he's supposed to be Robert De Niro in Cape Fear, and he was really Robert De Niro in Bad Grandpa. I mean, that's what this was. It was just terrible. You didn't know where it was going. And people will say, well, that's Vince's fault. That's Vince's fault. He's the one that, and that takes me to this. And I want to ask Austin this. And you're seeing it all day today, and we have seen this for years now, that he is a genius. He has these amazing ideas. He's so brilliant. Everything is brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. But anything that sucks is Vince's fault. Now, I will blame Vince for the red cage and all that. You know, that obviously was Vince's fault. But do we know, and I'm asking because I may have missed it, how do we know what is Bray's ideas and what is Vince's ideas? What do we know here? Now, we know Vince has a track record. I mean, I'll be the first. I am not a Vince McMahon fan. But it just seems like today especially, everybody in the world loves this gimmick. They love Bray. Bray's the greatest. Bray's this. Bray's that. Oh, but he sucks. They ruined the gimmick. Well, what is it? Does it suck or is it good? And again, where's the interview where he says, they ruined all my ideas. They screwed this up. They screwed that up. And don't tell me just because you lost to Goldberg. You know, don't tell me that, because I just see this whole gimmick as, where do you go with it? Now, in Austin, you tell me what you think here. But my whole thing was, okay, it's cool at first, but where does it go? And it never really did. And especially the Fiend, where he's supposed to be this invincible guy. You can't stop him. You can't stop him. Well, then what do we do with them? We're on Halloween 17 now. Like, where do we go? Like, what can you possibly do with this guy? That's my problem with it. And it's a different world than normal wrestling. I mean, it just doesn't work when you put him in there with a normal wrestler. Austin, now I know that's a lot. Go ahead.
No, yeah, it's all good. And on the topic of like, what do we know did Vince put in and Bray? We don't know like who had the creative put of what went where. Right. All we know is that Vince has the final say on all storylines and all programs that are going on.
And he has a bad track record a lot of the times.
He does, yeah. And that's the thing is that he does. And like, while we know for a fact that like the character presentation of how Bray portrays himself and how he acts and how he moves in the ring and how he acts on the Funhouse, that we know is that's Bray projecting himself, whether or not it's written for him or he wrote it down or something. Bray's projecting very well, and he's cutting great promos. But I think the turning point specifically for the Fiend and how like things got really muddled, because Fiend was doing okay up until Hell in a Cell 2019. And that was a situation where WWE booked themselves into a corner because they knew Bray was hot and they were kind of pushing him towards the Universal title picture, but they didn't want Seth's reign to end. But then they can't have the Fiend lose clean because he's on a streak. So they did this baffling, unbelievably awful finish where Bray just stood there being an undefeated, invincible monster, just taking comically ridiculous beatings from Seth Rollins until the referee decided to be a Karen and call a complete stoppage to a Hell in a Cell match.
In a Hell in a Cell match.
Yeah. That finish we know is like Vince has the say on that. Because if Bray had to say on the finish, I guarantee you that would not be the case, because what wrestler would book like that kind of situation?
So what's his excuse for every other match he was ever in?
So that's
they weren't any good either.
But again, here's the other thing too, is that like a big issue I honestly think with Bray, with the Fiend, is that like, because he's a horror movie character, and a horror movie character and a villain in a horror movie has the beginning part of the movie where he's supposed to be invincible and scary. And that's what he was, where he would no-sell stuff and he would just come at you and he'd be spooky and do all this kind of stuff. But the big issue is that they put the title on him. And when you put the title on a horror movie character that's invincible, what are you supposed to do? He wore the damn thing around his neck and it was pretty much an albatross. He couldn't. It limits you creatively of what you can do with this weird character and this horror movie monster, because when he's invincible and he holds your top prize, then all of his storylines have to be built around, well, someone's got to challenge him for the championship. It's another combination of like just real world, like reality based wrestling versus this crazy cartoon old school 90s wrestling.
See, but that's the problem with it. That's the problem, because Nick, go ahead, talk about that. I know that's big on your part because you are a massive Seth Rollins fan, and that was the end of Seth Rollins. I mean, we want to talk about it being the end of the Fiend. It was the end of Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins hasn't gotten up since. And
Daniel Bryan,
he's not the only one who has taken a massive dive since their feuds with this guy. Braun Strowman was ruined after a year ago right now when he fought in that swamp match and all that other dumb crap they did with him. You can't put normal people in the ring with this guy, because how do you book around it?
And it gets worse and worse. I mean, you tune in and and maybe you guys know, like, suppose you have friends over. You're watching Monday Night Football. You flip the channel. All your boys see this. This dude's got puppets. Right away, does he have puppet guys? Because they're obvious. It's weird. And then they book him in another dimension. Like when you say stuff like that, can we, Austin, let me ask you, would you, if someone who had tuned out of wrestling, because we've lost a lot of people since the Attitude Era, right? We all know that. What was watching is not. If they tune back in and see this on the screen, do you honestly think they're staying or leaving?
That's the thing, is it really comes down to the fact of like how much believability you have in it. And for lapsed fans, it's going to be a lot harder for them to buy into something like that. They're going to get more attached to something like AEW, where they can turn the channel on. They're like, oh, Chris Jericho, oh, Sting, oh, Christian, like guys that they can remember, or Taz. And they want like Lapsed fans want to see stuff that they recognize or something completely different, like that they've never seen before. Some Lapsed fans, I think, could buy into this because they think it's just weird. Because wrestling, when it gets weird, if done very meticulously and very carefully, can be a lot of fun. And I think, like, back in New Japan, there was a great tag team. I think they were called the Time Splitters, where they were literally a Back to the Future. I'm wearing the shirt, actually. Back to the Future
Best movie
tag
ever, by
team.
the way.
It is really good. It is really good. And they would literally have fake time travel where, like, a past version of themselves would come, like, through the entrance ramp trying to stop them from taking this match. It's ridiculous, but it's funny as hell. And it's like, Lapsed fans could see that and they laugh and they're like, I want to see what the hell this guy does. Like, and like, that's the thing. It's like, one of those guys is currently in NXT right now, and he's amazing. I'm blanking on the name. I apologize, but one of them is in NXT, and he's currently the Kushida, and he's the Cruiserweight champion, and he's amazing.
The Fiend hasn't been universally panned, but he has been almost universally panned. When you look at a lot of awards, all of our awards, which, you know, it's just us. We're not sitting here saying we're the Observer or anything, but he won like worst everything. The Observer,
they gave him that.
Yes, the Observer. I mean, I'm looking through here, and it's not just the Fiend. Worst feud of the year versus Seth Rollins in 2019. Yep. Worst feud of the year 2020 against Braun Strowman. But it goes back even further. 2014, worst worked match of the year against John Cena, Extreme Rules. 2017, I was there for this, along with you, Nick. WrestleMania 33, worst match of the year against Randy Orton. I mean, this goes back like 6 or 7 years, so it's not just The Fiend. And I want to talk about the original Bray Wyatt, because he came in hot. He was huge. And let's be fair here, best gimmick of 2013, the Wyatt family. So let's give them credit. But they were hot when they first came in. They were different, but it didn't go anywhere. And once again, somebody might say that's Vince's fault. Vince didn't do it. Nick, you were a guy who was a huge fan, and then you kind of fell off. Why did you fall off? What happened? And again, this isn't just a new thing. I think people kind of just got tired of it. Why did it lose steam? What happened there? And not with everybody, but with some people, it lost steam. And I wonder why.
To me, it was the music was great. It sat well with them. He portrayed that, you know, the rocking chair thing, the crazy swamp guy, whatever. It was great. But just what you said, it didn't go anywhere. I remember, I think the first big match they had was versus Kane at SummerSlam. And
might have been his very first feud, I think, wasn't it?
I think they drug him off after that match, and they took Kane away. Okay, I'm fine with that. But then Kane shows back up.
Kane makes sense because he's got a supernatural dude.
You didn't do anything. Like Kane, maybe Kane shows back up and he's shaking in the head. He's not himself. Like they did something. No, dude. Kane just shows back. Like, I don't even know. Like, they had Pulp Fiction going on back there with Kane. I don't know what's going on, but it was nothing. And it kept going on like that. And then they just they did the same thing. They fought the Shield for a while. It just didn't go anywhere. They were just crazy hill guys or whatever you want, swamp guys that hung out together. And
spoke a lot of nonsense.
And again, was this Vince? Was this Bray? I don't know. But I just kind of lost it because he just – and then I think the Cena match with the kids.
Oh, yeah.
I was like –
is that the one they called the worst match here, that Extreme Rules match when the kids were all around?
One, I think.
Okay, that was – I didn't – you're going to a place where I can't go with you when you're doing this stuff. I'm a big guy that's for rules. I mean, that's why I don't like a lot of movies when they do sequels, prequels, or spinoffs. You got to stay with what you're giving me. And I'm sorry I'm picky, but he just kind of got weirder, not making sense, not going anywhere. And then, not to his fault, he did start, I mean, he goes for a while, but he starts to lose. They go on like a losing rampage for a while there.
He talked a lot, and he never followed through with anything he was saying. and it was a lot of gibberish, and then he would lose. And he is a heel. Heel should lose in the end. I mean, that's the way usually it goes. But he did lose a lot, and I think that definitely hurt him. I know a lot of people point to the Cena thing. Austin, I want to ask you the same thing, but first, I have a real quick comment because of what you were saying. They did start going more hocus pocus with some things, and I think, me personally, I think a lot of people, because it started so hot, they got behind it and they love, oh my gosh, this new dude. Okay. They got in wrestling kind of sucked at the time. They were looking for something. And then this spooky guy comes in and then it kind of started going, but people still liked him. And people wanted him to be good. So they wanted him to be the new Undertaker so bad that they wouldn't let themselves see that this isn't going anywhere. This is kind of, I think people just wanted that new Undertaker, and then they wouldn't let themselves, anyway, they got blinded by that. Austin, where did you think, and maybe it didn't, but something happened there when he was still the other Bray Wyatt in the Wyatt family. So it did lose its luster there a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that's a good fair point too, of like people wanted this character that was so different at the time to be successful, because the field was pretty barren at that time in 2014 when he was really getting hot leading. Because let's not forget that Cena match at WrestleMania 30, like fans were 1,000% behind Bray. They wanted him to take down Cena. They already didn't like Cena, and they wanted something interesting to go down with. It's just like, when people are given the same stuff, like they just want anything different. Like it's like when Roman was on top too, people, when he wasn't a heel, when he was babyface, it was anybody but you.
Yep.
It's like,
and that's at that time. That's at that same time. You're right.
Yeah. And I think also just because, again, like characters like Undertaker, like Kane, like Mankind, those characters can work. It was definitely a different time of where you could kind of put those kind of characters in, because like you'd have random guys like D-Generation X were just a bunch of dudes that would just tell you to suck it. And then there was always like the Brood, of course, like that. Like it was basically like a little village, like just like it was a company of wrestlers that were just like random and there was no reason behind it. You would just meet someone new every week, it seemed like. And it just seemed like with Bray, he was a great character at a wrong time, but at the same time though, fans wanted a character like him because it was so different. And no, he didn't get much going after that point. It was a downward spiral. He had the WWE Championship as the Eater of Worlds as well at one point, and no one really remembers that title reign. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't the I can't remember. It was another kind of cinematic match, but before they started doing that with the Firefly Funhouse, the one he had with Randy Orton when it was in like the horror house, the House of Horrors match.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. Which, yeah.
And
again,
when he stood outside, the house is on fire, and
yes.
And that's like he burned the already dead body of Sister Abigail.
We know for a fact that WWE they wanted to do stuff with Bray because they would put him out there just to cut promos, because they know he could cut promos even though he wasn't saying anything. And I, as a fan, I will tell you, like those promos, he presented them very well and he was captivating and you wanted to listen to him, but there was nothing substance-wise that he was saying, but people listened because like every week he'd come out with the Fireflies in the crowd. Like he was getting great reactions and stuff like that. I truly stand by the fact that like while Bray had this like crazy idea for a character, I don't think WWE was prepared or ready for a character of that style. Whether or not it connected with people because they thought it was like ridiculous or over the top, which it was, but I think people either like it because of that or they don't like it because of that. They had no idea what to do with this character. It fell in their lap. Bray was like, I want to do this, and they just didn't know what to do with it.
I'll give a counterpoint to that. You're probably not wrong that they did screw some things up, obviously, along the way. I don't think anybody's going to sit here and say they didn't. But that said, WrestleMania 30, he fights John Cena. WrestleMania 31, he fights The Undertaker. WrestleMania 32, he was hurt. But guess who he is in the ring with for 20 minutes? The Rock. The Rock. and then John Cena again. And The Rock was supposed to fight Triple H at WrestleMania 32 because of movies and insurance. He couldn't. So he ends up being in the ring with Bray Wyatt, who The Rock straight out tells, dude, you're awesome. You've got the whole package. You're just missing something. I forget exactly what he said. But The Rock puts this guy over. WrestleMania 33, he is in the world title match. So it's not like they didn't push this guy. I think people got kind of revisionist history there. He is in one of, if not arguably, the biggest match in 4 straight WrestleManias. Now, did it work out? No, it didn't. And you can blame numerous things for that. Hey, real quick, Mick Foley, with the WWE's release, this is a tweet, by the way, of Bray Wyatt, the company has lost a true visionary and a creative genius, one of the most innovative makers of mayhem pro wrestling has ever seen. Here's hoping Bray Wyatt finds happiness and recreates himself once again in wrestling, in life, or both. Not surprised that Mick said that. I don't know if this is a counterpoint. I don't know if this is just a rip on the internet community or dirt sheets or whatever in general. Here's MVP. I assume it's about everybody saying different things about Bray, why he got let go, who let him go, everything that's being talked about online. Here's MVP. I'm amused when reading my Twitter feed and seeing, quote, wrestling fans passionately argue about the goings-on behind the scenes and being incredibly wrong, especially when I know firsthand what happened with the particular situation, smiley face. So I assume, given that it came out 3 hours ago, this is what he is talking about, this whole situation that's going on today.
Ryan, I wanted to ask, I think we also got to go back, because I would disagree, with all due respect, Austin, on those guys you mentioned. Was Papa Shango big or was the Godfather big?
Oh, no, the Godfather was big. I'm not saying...
Were the Acolytes big or was the APA big? Were the Brood big or were Edge and Christian big? Was Kane big? Or when they gave Kane like DX and merged him with that, did he get kind of over? Was Mankind big or was funny, normal, more Mankind big?
I truly think that, like, at least in the case of Mankind, I think when he had feuds with guys like Taker, like guys with The Rock in an I Quit match, I think he really was over in that period. But no, again, like, those characters, it's really hard to do scary seriously. That's why it's so easy to throw on a horror movie and then just make fun of it, because a lot of it's ridiculous, a lot of it's not realistic, a lot of it can be viewed as silly. Like, I will say this, I'm a firm horror fan, and like, some people think that one of the scariest horror movies in the last few years was the It movies with Pennywise, and I think the presentation of Pennywise is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. It's hysterical to me to watch that movie. It is the best comedy I've ever seen. But that's how difficult horror is. And while I think the presentation is 100% there, while I think Bray put his all into it, the surrounding factors of how he was there, like the situation, like it was going to be difficult to succeed. I think Bray is I agree with the fact that he's incredibly creative and like has a mind for creating characters that I think we don't see a ton of in wrestling. I think it's just going to be really hard to get that over with a WWE fan base, but it's also just going to be hard to do it in WWE in general.
When you need a dancing partner too, you know, you can't have Bray fighting normal people, as we said before. If you look at the Mankind, you know, he came right in his first, and he wrestled The Undertaker a bunch, but it was The Undertaker against Mankind when he was still the weirdo Mankind before he turned into what he became in the Attitude
20
Era.
People in the seats that were watching those matches enjoyed that.
You know, you need a dancing partner, and you know, The Undertaker obviously gets brought up a lot, and once again, and I will say, and it's quite obvious, I am not a fan of the supernatural things in wrestling because of kind of what Nick just said. It doesn't really work long term. It might work for a feud or so, but then where are you going? And I think The Undertaker is a prime example of that. the Undertaker, normal Undertaker, was the normal guy there for whatever it was, 4, 5, 6 years. Then he went away for a while, and he was hurt a couple times. So you got away from him for a little bit. You didn't have to keep seeing him. And then he changed. Then he became evil Undertaker. Then he became biker Undertaker. Then by the time he came back as regular old Undertaker again, how many matches did he fight a year? He fought at Mania, and then for a little bit, maybe a couple of months, and then he got hurt, and then he was gone again until Mania. Then it just became, for the last 8 or 9 years, just Mania. So you never got a chance to get sick of this character, where with Bray, and he missed some time too now. Now, let's not forget that. He was gone for a while, but, you just kind of get tired of it. Like, a character like this has to go away for a little bit because you can't see it every night.
Yeah, I love that point, honestly. And I do think there was a period too, both in the time where he was the Eater of Worlds and the time where when he was the Fiend. I feel like once he started, like, his work with Alexa before the Mania match, I think they were a great, like, Harley and Mr. J. I thought they paired off each other really well. Also, I gotta say, now that Bray's gone, Alexa needs to drop that gimmick now, because there's no need for her to be acting like this anymore. There's no point. The whole idea of her turning heel was supposedly that there was going to be a feud between Alexa and Bray. Didn't happen. So there's really no need for her to be this character. While she has the idea of what she wants to be for that character, again, bad situation, and it's not getting over right now. And I think it would be fine if she's like, now that Bray's gone, she snaps out of it. But also, there was a point in both iterations of Bray Wyatt where he truly was being overused, and you saw him too much. And, like, that's why we always comment on Bray's promos when he would just be in the back with his lamp and he would just talk and say nonsense. A character like that needs to be sparingly. You can't. The best thing about a horror movie is when you don't know what the monster looks like for a good amount of time. And when Bray was doing the beginning Firefly Funhouse, where we had no idea where this was going, we never saw the Fiend. We got inklings of, like, what is going on? There's something not right here, but we never got a clear vision of the Fiend until it was fully debuted. And a character like that, and a character like, I think, Undertaker, Kane, when you see too much of the monster, it's not scary anymore. Like, we see that in Stranger Things. We see that in a lot of popular horror franchises. When you see too much of the villain and you see too much of the monster, it no longer becomes scary. So I think
Halloween 1.
Yeah,
Halloween
exactly.
1, you never saw the guy. His name was The Shape, because you never saw him. That's why it was scary. Whoa, is he going to come out? Who is that? What's that in the woods?
Yeah, like what you guys are talking about here, though, is kind of my problem. You're talking about the movie Halloween. When you go in to watch the movie Halloween, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be Jeepers Creepers. It could be Freddy Krueger. It could be you are going into that movie with a mindset, this is the new world I'm living in or watching, right? Freddy Krueger exists. We all know he doesn't exist in this here world, right? This is the problem. He can't exist in this world. Like, you have painted me a world with Randy Orton, with the MMA girl, like Ronda Rousey, with Brock Lesnar, with, I mean, dear God, even Hulk Hogan's, to the Macho Man's, the NWO. And then you inject this in. And it just does not make sense to me. I mean, people are using magical powers. People are summoning the fire and things like it. I think this is the hardest time that an average new viewer or a coming back viewer, you're going to have a problem with this. Like that. That's the thing that I can't get over on this guy. It's just, and my second thing I was going to make, giving someone a gimmick like this and riding it, this guy, and no one's talked about this on the release, they may not be able to reboot this guy. This may have been Vince saying, dude, if you want to be something, you got to go to New Japan. You got to go to AEW. You got to do something different, because obviously he can't just come out next week as the Red Rooster or so, so obviously he's not going to be the Rooster, but like a new gimmick. Like, he can't just come out next week as Jimmy Smith.
Well, that's why they let him go, right? They're not afraid of him going. And we heard it yesterday on the conference call that they said they weren't worried, and people didn't believe it. But it may be a lie, But they wouldn't have let this guy go if they were worried about him. So they obviously are not worried about him being on the other channel, like it or not. I mean, they wouldn't have let him go, right?
You would assume. I mean, there's always that, there's a chance. I mean, but I haven't seen anybody jump ship to AEW, and I'm not ripping on AEW. There wasn't anybody that jumped ship to TNA or Impact back 10, 15 years ago that completely switched the game and made everybody tune in.
Real quick, the whole world thing, and you mentioned the other dimension, and you and I made fun of this numerous times, and it was
third door on the
summer.
right.
Yeah, last summer when Raw Underground was going on, Bray is in his other dimension, and they screamed it. He's in another dimension. 10 seconds later, Seth shows up in the funhouse. Seth was just in the ring the segment before. How did he get to the other dimension? Like, it's the next door on the left past the Raw Underground door, and then he burned it down. No, it just, how did he get there? We were there in Detroit when they had the match, the whatever they called it match.
New Day.
Outside with the New Day. And we crapped all over it because they were in the ring 5 seconds ago. Now they're at the Wyatt compound. Where was the Wyatt compound? Hamtramck? Like right next door to
8 Mile.
Yeah, what was it at Eminem's house? I didn't know the Wyatts were from Detroit. How did they get there? It's mind-numbing, and that could be
Sister
Vince's
Abigail
fault.
lives down from the Coliseum, I think, in L.A. Wasn't that where he broke down the match?
Yeah. I mean, that happened with Orton too. Yeah, because when Orton burned down the compound, whatever city they were in that week, that must have been where the Wyatts lived, and maybe that is something you can blame on Vince. But if Bray is such a genius, why didn't he say, no, we can't do that? You can't have that person in the building that night and then drive to my compound. Like,
I don't think Bray had enough veteranosity to be able to say stuff like or refuse storylines like that.
That could be.
And while I do think he can push back on stuff, again, it's still everything's got to go. It's still Vince's show. He's going to book it how he wants. And while he may have pitched some of those ideas that people crapped on or something like that, maybe he thought it was a great idea to have the ring also be red, but also have red lighting for when you have matches.
How about the big mallet?
Yeah.
How come he didn't say anything about that?
I don't know. Like I said,
what about the worms in the ring at WrestleMania? Whose idea was that?
It's always a weird situation. It's just the character is so drastically different that it just clashes. And I think you either buy into this thing wholeheartedly because it's so different and you're like, this is insane.
Right.
I love insane stuff. Let's get into this. Or you just push against it because it's like, I have no idea what's going on.
We lost Nick.
That's okay. That.
And exactly what you're saying. He'll jump back in. A great tweet here from a guy named Trevor Dame, famous Twitter guy here talking about wrestling. Bray is a weird special case where I feel like he is a difference maker to a group of fans who will follow him anywhere. But for another group, he's an immediate channel changer, turn off act. How these two groups balance out in total is for people smarter than me to figure out. And I think, and we mentioned that earlier, I think just based on the character, people are going to love this or hate it.
It's controversial, absolutely. And I really don't think there's any in between with that. And I think that's the risk you take with a character that's so out there. Right. And you can sometimes get a smash where I genuinely believe that you are the only person I know who does not like The Undertaker. But majority wise,
Nick hates him worse than I do.
Nick hates him, which there you go.
He ejected himself, so he's right.
But sometimes you'll get a smash like that where you'll have a character that can somehow last almost 30 years, changing his identity and doing crazy things and coming out of burning coffins and stuff like that. Right. And sometimes it just you get pushback from it, where you get weird characters that you don't really get into. because they're so weird. And I think wherever Bray goes, I don't think, no matter where he goes, I don't think he's bringing the Fiend character with him. I think he's doing something drastically different. Whether or not he will most definitely make address to it or reference it or throw Easter eggs in or something wherever he goes, because he's always done that with all of his previous characters. Hell, he did that with Husky Harris. One of the puppets' names was literally Huskus.
Right.
So he has.
Since you mention it, let's go there. Let's go there.
Okay.
I was going to ask you that last, but since we're already talking about it, Nick's internet died. Hopefully he will be back with us. If not, hey, it's all right. Austin's here, man. So, what's next? What's next? Obviously everybody is immediately, he's going to AEW. He's going to go there.
The first response.
But, there's the rumors out there, which have been refuted, but saying the reason why he got lit on fire and the reason why he's been off TV for so long over the past 7-8 months is because he's had a hard time dealing with Brody's death, who was his boy. Now, there has been fake Instagram posts about his mental health, and Sean Ross Sapp has said today that that's a report from Bill Bahati, and he could not confirm that. And he even said that would be careless to put out there. I don't know if any of that's true. So the point is, he may not want to come back. He may have asked for his release. We are not sure what happened here. We don't know if he wants to wrestle right now. He's just had another kid. It's less than a year old right now. So if he does come back, though, what do you think? Where does he go? And, obviously he can't be Bray Wyatt. He can't be the Fiend. He does have an interesting name. Windham Rotunda is an interesting name. That's kind of a weird, creepy sounding name. So you could still do something. What's he doing? What do you think he should do?
That's the thing too, is that none of us have any idea what's going on with him with situations like that. And I do think, while I don't know if it's going to be the contributing factor of if he decides not to wrestle again, I know for a fact, I'm sure Brody Lee's death must have hit him like very hard.
Sure.
We saw Eric Rowan on AEW Dynamite in tears, like his fallen brother there. And it's definitely one of the most difficult things I think a lot of wrestling fans had to deal with in 2020, like in their own world, like one of the most beloved guys in all of wrestling across the board was tragically lost. And I'm sure that hit him harder, as he was one of the closest guys to him in wrestling. And the instant idea, though, if that's not the case and he still wants to wrestle, of him going to AEW, it's the instinct to go with. But I honestly don't know if AEW, other than because with guys like CM Punk and Daniel Bryan, those names are so huge that like I can't even deny like they would get them just because of name recognition. A guy like Bray Wyatt, while he's very popular with wrestling fans, I think their roster is getting to a point, and I know they have Rampage where they're going to most likely have a lot of their roster also appearing, and they also still have Dark and Dark Elevation where they have matches and stuff like that. So they can still use pretty much almost everybody on their roster. But I think it's getting to a point where I think the company's starting to feel a lot more comfortable with who they have. And the whole talk is like, oh, well, the AEW originals are going to get buried under this flooding of former WWE guys. I don't think AEW is the place where I think he would go. We got Nick back. Yes.
He is resurrected like the Fiend. He is back. Okay, but yeah, continue.
I'll finish up my thoughts, and then you can get to Nick with this. I don't think, because of how big and how I think the company is comfortable with their roster, I don't think AEW would be the spot. And I think if he went to a company in Japan, not saying New Japan, he could like All Japan or anything, any company in Japan, I think a character like Bray Wyatt and like his wild mindset that he has, I think could truly fit so much more in that world, in that universe, because Japanese wrestling fans already buy into a lot of the more crazy, wild stuff about pro wrestling and entertainment as well. Like one of the most famous characters in all of Japanese entertainment is literally a giant lizard. So,
right.
So I think he would fit well more in New Japan, but that's just my personal thought. But wherever he goes, my first instinct is I don't think he's going to AEW. That's just my thought.
Well, and you mentioned earlier, and I had it written down in your very first statement, you said something about, WWE is grounded in, more older style. It's about the titles. It's about this, that, and the other. Well, that's what we were told AEW was going to be about from the get-go. We're going to be more sports-based. We're going to have rankings, and we're going to this, that, and the other. So, yeah, does he fit there? And Tony Khan is on the record saying he absolutely hated when Broken Matt Hardy came in and did his teleporting and all that, which was Chris Jericho's idea, by the way. And he threw Jericho under the bus for that idea. So, I don't know. If he did go there, I think it'd have to be some kind of throwback to the Swamp.
Yeah. And with Broken Matt not doing well really in AEW, like he really only did really well in Impact. Like it's got to be a company with a lot more like fans that buy into stuff like that. And Impact bought into it just because it's Matt Hardy, and also it was so ridiculous that it instantly became like it was like kind of it's for a lot of fans. I think it became a so bad it's good kind of thing.
Absolutely, yeah. It was the best worst movie you've ever seen. That's what got it over. Absolutely, man. I agree with that. Although I do think AEW fans, because of the culture we're in now, they can do no wrong. Everybody wants to shut Vince down. People will just love him anyway. And he does have the great fan base. He has a supportive fan base. Now, what I wanted to ask is, and I'll start with you, Nick, since you just came back, since everybody's so upset and everybody has talked about, well, this is ridiculous. Like he should have done this and they ruined him here and he should have won that match. And he should have lost to Goldberg or Cena or anybody else. Apparently he's supposed to be undefeated. What did you want to happen? Have you thought about that? Give me a very quick, don't give me a year-long fantasy book here.
Fiend?
Just Bray Wyatt in general, not even The Fiend, because to me, the guy was not good in 2016. He didn't just get bad at that Hell in a Cell match. He was bad before that, leading into that match with Randy Orton, and he hasn't been good since, if you ask me. So where do you think it went wrong? What would you rather have seen? What should have happened with this dude?
I mentioned that a little bit earlier in the show. A con artist. This guy, it would have covered everything. All the hocus pocus, all from whatever area you wanted to flip him, whether it had been 2015 or 2019, The Fiend wasn't working. Everything I did was smoke and mirrors. I have been manipulating. I have been pulling strings. I'm a cult leader, like stuff like that. Like maybe a vignette or something where they catch him in the background, where he's admitting like, yeah, I got these people wrapped around my finger with this Fiend thing, man, or something like that. Because it's the only way I think to go. I like I said, I don't like these characters. It's an instant fast forward or channel changer for me. So that would be in a nutshell quick. I thought a con artist with the same. I like the Swamp, the original one gimmick that he came in with the Wyatt family. The guy can talk. That's the way I would want.
He's a manipulator, manipulating these small town schmucks like Rowan and Harper and getting them to buy in Jim Jones style kind of is what you – all right. Yeah, and it was all made up. He was just full of crap. Austin, where did you want it to go? Where should it have gone?
Okay, well, again, I think The Fiend was some of his had some of the highest highs of Bray's career. Again, like we talk about how he doesn't work with a lot of like grounded wrestlers, but I still think that Firefly Funhouse match, which was a complete character assassination of one of the most polarizing and well-known characters in John Cena, was one of the craziest things that we got to see, because it was self-aware in itself of like it tapped into WWE's history, did all this kind of stuff, and just really I bought into that whole line. What I wanted from Bray, honestly, is like his original Eater of the Worlds gimmick reminded me a little bit of the Straight Edge Society with CM Punk, because he had the religious kind of connotations where he'd get on his knees and he'd throw his arms out, kind of crucifix style, having people sing he's got the whole world in his hands. And we know for a fact that like the character of like a religious manipulating cult leader who like has all this Jesus iconography and stuff like that gets under people's skin. It's not a thing that people like when you like take all that iconography and you put it in a way that they don't think represents that story or that image or that whatever you want to call it. If he kind of tapped into the more of the religious side of that Wyatt family character and kind of really started to try to like full on cult leader, like get more people and like, I'm not even saying like get it to a level of like the Nexus or like the NWO, but like the SES capped it at 5. I think 5 is a perfect amount. It's like kind of like a solid faction group. And I think it could have gotten major heat, like, because Bray honestly works best when he's doing heel stuff, when he's being like creepy and ominous. So something along the lines of that, I thought could have been really, really good.
I wonder how many more people, because I don't think what we both said is that far apart.
It's really not.
Cult leader and con artist.
Yeah.
Don't they kind of run cult leader, con artist in the same crowd?
Relatively, yeah.
You know,
they all seem to end the same with a burning building in Waco, Texas, or so. You know,
a bowl of Kool-Aid or something.
Yeah.
You know,
obviously, he's not here anymore, and it kind of ended not the way people wanted it to end. His last match ended at WrestleMania 37 to a chorus of boos from the people, and many of his other matches also ended with boos. Of course, that last one was probably hard for him to handle. That's the last time he's at Bray Wyatt. That's the last time he's the Fiend. So I'm going to say it this way, but I'm not going to say his career was a failure. But being that he's not here anymore, who's at fault for Bray Wyatt's failure? Why is Bray Wyatt not there anymore?
Who's taking this first?
Either one of you can go.
I'll go, I guess.
Go ahead.
Sure. Okay. There's a guy in hockey called you Red Wing fans will know him, Claude Lemieux, right? He's got 4 Stanley Cups. So at some point in time, you have to look at and say, this guy is a part of the reason these teams are good. On the flip side, this guy has been in the worst match, his Hell in a Cell with Rollins, the Extreme Rules with John Cena, the Swamp match, the Goldberg match. I mean, the list can go on of how many bad matches, the one with Orton with the worms at WrestleMania. Were all of them his idea? I don't know. But there seems to be one part of the recipe that is the same. And it's him. He's in these matches. I don't, he's part of this. I mean, either A, Vince McMahon doesn't know what he's doing and he's doing all this, or Bray Wyatt's making this bad too. He's writing and he's not as good as we think it is. You said it earlier, Ryan, he can't have his cake and eat it too. He can't be this, great genius. This guy we know, he's light years in front of everybody. He's Prince from the music world just in wrestling. You know, this guy is amazing. But there's so much crap that goes with it. And he gets nothing for any of that. Like, that's all Vince, though. I think he gets just as much as anybody. If not, to some degree, you got to get yourself over a little bit. I understand the booking may not have been great. He may have been squashed a lot, but they also pushed the guy. He's got 2 world title runs. He was in, like you said, 3. He's got 4 WrestleManias where you could argue he's the co-main event. I put a lot of this on Bray Wyatt. I'm sorry. I don't think the guy is terrible, but I don't think he's as good as everybody keeps toting that he is.
This goes back to what I said earlier about everybody really, really wants him to be. I'm not doubting that the guy is creative, but because everybody really wants him to be great, we are assuming that every idea he had was awesome. and every bad idea was Vince's idea. I don't know. Could be wrong. I can't see Vince going, you know what we need? We need a bunch of maggots on that mat. That's what we need. When he flips upside down, we need maggots.
They did put zombies around the ring for a Miz and Morrison match.
Well,
so he wouldn't do something like that.
Well, guess what? Kenny Omega came out dressed like Space Jam last week. So
that was a selling point for HBO Max. It's TNT.
Well, this was a selling point for the whatever movie they were doing too. I mean,
yeah, but they could have stopped it at Batista. Like, they had Batista already. So there's your stopping point.
I agree. It was terrible.
We got it. We're done.
It was awful.
Don't get me wrong. They were both terrible. That zombie thing was so bad. So bad. Austin, go ahead, man. What do you think?
So while I'll kind of wrap my points up into this, where like you said, like this, there's got to be a bit of this on Bray and like of him having to get over. And the one common thing I would point to that would lead this more toward being the fault of either bad creative, bad writing, or Vince himself. The point I would make into all those things is that all those bad matches, all those bad feuds, despite all of them, at the start of every single one of those, Bray got good reactions, really good reactions. So
that's true.
The fans bought into Bray and what he was presenting right then and there. What happened in the match construction, which at the end of the day, Vince has a say on what the match is going to be and what it's pushing towards because he's putting the stories out. That's the thing most people talk about. The presentation of the maggots being projected in the ring for Randy Orton and Alexa Bliss having goo going down her face and having like all these toolboxes, mallets, chair after chair, and then the referee calls it a non-finish for a Hell in a Cell match. That is going to ultimately fall on creative and booking because, again, they have the final say on what the finish and what the story going forward for these matches are. So while I think if you want to put some blame on Bray, you can. I don't think the majority of the blame would lie with Bray Wyatt as to why he wasn't more successful. Because he was successful, multi-time WWE champion, despite the fact that those title reigns weren't necessarily viewed very fondly. And again, I think it's just because why would a character like Bray Wyatt, why would a character like The Fiend even want a championship? So already you're limited with what you can present with him there. So if you want my thoughts, Bray got great reactions. The matches did not. And somebody's got to put those matches together and have the final say. And it's Vince.
Well, you just made my point for me. Who's at fault is the character itself. Because the character doesn't work. You eventually have to get in the ring. And his character calls for the goo. His character calls for the maggots. His character calls for the fire and shooting lightning and coming out of a swamp and disappearing and all this other stuff. The character calls for that. And that's the problem. This is professional wrestling. This is not freaking Weekend at Bernie's. Like, the character's a problem. It is a dead end gimmick. It's cool at first because you're like, whoa, this is different. Oh, this is good. Once you start doing the hocus pocus stuff, man. I mean, look at AEW with Shaq. Shaq disappears out of an ambulance. What? How does that make any sense? Who lost the 7'2", 350-pound guy? Where did he go? He's gone. He's vanished. Oh my! Everybody was just like, "That's the dumbest thing ever." Like, why would you go there? It's the same thing with this stuff. Like, even though he's a different, it's the same thing. It's still wrestling. Like, Bray doing that stuff is no different than Shaq disappearing out of an ambulance. Like, or dying because he got lit on fire. And then all of a sudden he just reincarnates only to get beat again in 5 seconds. And it's just the girl talking to a doll tripping Eva Marie on a swing. Like,
powers to bring things down from the ceiling.
Right. like, why wouldn't you just do that immediately? Like, if you have this power to zap somebody or to pull something, pull
or
something like the
mind
Emperor,
control,
or a mind control, like Alexa did in the ladder match the other day, then why don't you just do that every time? What are we wasting our time wrestling for? Zap them and the game's over. Like, what are we doing? It just, the character is the problem. It's cool at first, but you got to get in the ring. This is wrestling. This is how we solve things, in the ring. And he doesn't work in the ring. And he got booed because it didn't work in the ring. Like, so that's my 2 cents on it. I know other people loved it. I think, like we said, that tweet we read, Nick, when you were gone, I think that just sums it up, period. It is too bad, man, because there are a lot of people out there. And he was making money. He was selling shirts. All of that.
We should see now, though, right? I mean,
yeah, I think,
like, this will be the test whether we come back. Maybe we come back a year from now. Mark the date. Job guys, same panel this time next year. Let's see what this guy does, because wherever he goes, AEW or Japan, ROH, he should have more control. Wouldn't you both agree?
Absolutely.
He will have more than he did. And if he is ever going to get himself over, let's see if he can do it.
The only question with that is, for 20 years now, 25, I've been told that people having creative control is the problem in wrestling, and that creative control literally bankrupt one company is what I was told. And now everybody wants this guy to have complete control. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. Just wanted to put my 2 cents in on that one right there.
I hope he works. I like I said, there was something there.
Oh, gosh, yes.
There was something. Like you said, it ain't this. But there was something there.
Yeah.
The
Obviously.
dude can talk. The dude can. He's got charisma. He's not. And like I said, I've never been a huge fan of in-ring. He is fine in the ring for me. And if he goes over to AEW, he can probably get the whole roster on rides at theme parks because of the height requirement. He could sneak them in.
Wow.
And he's big enough to get on the ride, so he could go over there and do wonders for them.
Oh boy!
No, maybe he'll be
the
great.
Parting shot. There's always a parting shot.
Take
Austin.
one at AEW.
There's always a parting
that's fine.
shot.
One of those tall guys bringing them to the ride would probably tear their quads while they were walking through the ride. So that's fine. It's okay. I'm sorry they move well. I'm sorry they can do things the tall guys can't.
They get hurt more than the big guys in WWE.
Well, they get hurt because their friends drop them on their head. That's why they get hurt. Yeah. You know.
But I hope, hey, Austin, I hope this dude I think you are right. I do agree. Japan for this gimmick would be the place to go because it will be. But I hope because I want AEW to be something more than a circus. I want it to become a rival show. That is the only way wrestling is going to get better, is if someone pushes Vince McMahon and threatens him and comes up and I hope this guy goes over there and does well. I really do.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people that didn't like any of his characters or didn't think like what Bray was presenting was any good, and the idea of like, well, it's all like they disagree with the people that are just like, it's Vince's fault, and they just like they kind of stop there. Leaving WWE, whether he was let go, whether it was a mutual parting, whether he was fired, whatever the case was. Him now being out to go wherever he wants, and because like when you're a former WWE guy, you get a little bit more say of like what you have a lot more leeway of like what you want to do, like who you want to go wrestle, who you want to wrestle, where you want to wrestle, all these kinds of things, and how you want to present yourself. So if we want to see, and I kind of stop myself of saying like creative genius because I don't know exactly, like I said, what everything he created and what stuff WWE inputted. Like, I'm sure WWE had stuff to do with the Firefly Funhouse match, which I still tout about. And I don't know which ones was WWE and which ones was Bray. But for those that don't like his characters and how he's presenting them, him not being in WWE is going to be the proving point. Show us what you got. You don't have all the strings attached to you of like what you can and cannot do.
Yep.
Let's see what he has.
Well, and we've seen it with other guys, going away for a little bit has worked for a number of guys. So we'll see if that's the case here. And you're right, dude. And I'm a guy that does not like the gimmick. There's no way on earth I can say this guy is not talented, cannot talk, does not have charisma. You got to be an idiot to say that. And no, he does. So hopefully he finds himself a gimmick that works. And if he's not feeling too well right now, hopefully he gets better and he comes back, because he does have something to offer. He's got a lot to offer. He's got a ton to offer. So hopefully he does that. Dude, Austin, thanks for being here, dude. This was great, man. You're welcome back anytime. Glad to have you on here, dude. Thanks for your opinions. It's good to have a different opinion than just two old farts over here who watched Hogan in '87, man. This is awesome.
And congratulations on your new job.
Thank you.
Yeah, yes, man.
New sports announcer in where?
Alpena, Michigan.
Alpena, Michigan. Make sure people check him out.
Yeah, buddy.
Absolutely, yeah.
Up north area, man, on the east side of Michigan, check this dude out. He's good. I know he's good. He's going to do a great job up there. Just getting started in the biz.
Yes. And again, thank you guys for having me on. Like, it's fun to talk about wrestling and have disagreements and not be like shouting at each other over Twitter.
Oh, it's awesome.
Because these things can happen. Like, gosh. I do not agree with any of your guys' opinions on like some of the supernatural stuff, because
sure,
I guess my suspensions of disbelief is way different.
But
it's fun. It's fun to express these opinions and talk about them and explain why. So yeah. I hope
we like the cat Ernest Miller when no one else freaking did. So you know what? I mean, to each. If you liked Bray Wyatt's The Fiend, I'm glad you got 2 years of whatever you liked. Hey, if you liked it.
No, that's the way we always are. Like, I mean, I don't have to like it, but if you did, I wish I did. Because, you know, when I'm watching 3 hours on Monday night, I feel like I'm wasting 3 hours. I wish I did. I wish I did like it, We'll see you, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Pleasure's all yours, Bucky boys.